Perhaps I should commence on a little personal note today. When Mr. Rosenberg first came to see me and told me of his plans, I listened to him. I looked him over and I asked him, "How old are you?" He promptly told me his age. And I said, "Really, you're that young?" I said, "You're a brave fellow." Then I asked him, "But you know there have been several microfinance businesses that have come and gone?" He said, "Yes, I'm aware." And then I asked, "And you're going to take the risk?" He said, "We are different. I'm going to take the risk." When I heard the confidence, I said, well, this is a man we could do business with, and he deserves our support. And since then, he has justified the confidence we have had in him, and I've watched as his business has grown here in St. Lucia, but also in the wider Caribbean. I guess someday, he'll talk about himself and what motivated him and why he got to St. Lucia and why he's investing so heavily in St. Lucia. But I have to tell you that one of the things I admire about him is his love and respect for the people of St. Lucia. He speaks eloquently of his encounters with St. Lucians, with their experiences. And it is always a pleasure to share those experiences with him. And I really sincerely hope that that dimension of his personality remains intact as he builds his business and his investment in this country. The second thing I want to share with you is the role people like Alva and Musa and I are cast in. As you know, we're all politicians. I have a strong feeling that most of you know what politicians endure and what they go through on a daily basis. Today is, for example, my constituency day, and maybe I'm a little happy that I'm not going to the office today. Because you see, when you go to your offices, the burdens are extraordinary, and the request for help and for support and for assistance can be so overwhelming. And the most painful thing for a politician is when someone asks for help and you can't offer it. You don't know where to turn, what to do. You don't have the resources, the means. And at one time you have to give the bad news that you can't help, but you have to comfort the person at the same time. Politicians are counselors as well. And we feel the pain and the agony. But very often, our citizens ask us for loans to assist them. And that is always a very difficult encounter, very difficult. Because we know that quite often when we ask for loans and for support, we have to, in turn, go and beg someone else for assistance so that we can extend that kind of assistance to citizens. But we simply don't have the financial capability and capacity to do so. But you know what? The requests come in varied forms. There are small contractors who have been given contracts and they need bridging financing. There are farmers, for example, who require just seeds to germinate, to produce their crops. And there are individuals who need consumer items to resolve problems that they may have. You will notice that the three of us are here today. And when you see three politicians gather in one place like this, there is symbolic meaning to it. Symbolic value. I mean, it's not just an affirmation that my two colleagues understand that Vieux-Fort is the center of things. It's not just that. But it is something deeper that I suspect when you see we get those requests for financial help and for loans, we will now be able to whisper to those citizens, have you tried Axel financing? So there is some place that we can say, well, you know, there's financing available that you can think about. And I may say so facetiously in jest, but the truth is it's important, because the reality is that our country is going through an extraordinarily difficult time. And at this time, banks are very unwilling to lend money to individuals and to businesses. This is so despite the fact that the liquidity in banking systems tend to be exceedingly high at this time. But they have put a brake on lending because of the sheer difficulties that the region is facing at this time. Hence the importance of financial institutions like Axel, because Axel brings a very different kind of dimension. Axel seeks to target a section of the market that the banks themselves do not really tailor their products to or their businesses to. They do not have the capacity to understand the peculiar difficulties that small business people face or ordinary citizens face, and the trust threshold is exceedingly high. A bank has really got to trust you and trust you deeply and check your record to see whether you could possibly qualify for a loan. Institutions like Axel Finance have the ability to understand people, understand the needs of people, and therefore to respond. And so it is very easy for me to admit that in all honesty, the situations that confront our people are understandable. They do not always have savings or enough savings, and then the intent and persistence of unemployment wanes these days with fury and fleece anyway. It is really a challenge when shocks come into people's lives, shocks that require almost immediate response. And by shocks we can speak of the loss of a loved one, a medical emergency, or as Mr. Rosenberg just said a while ago, a parent who's anxious to find money to send a child to university or to allow for some measure of training. Sometimes, of course, these shocks can be a threat to your livelihood. For instance, for a fisherman, your boat has gotten damaged, or you may need a new engine simply because of theft. For a taxi driver, you may be experiencing a rough month with you having to spend money on your children's school books, and then you're faced with 2 flat tires, or your radiator is giving you problems, and it's difficult to get cash to deal with those situations. These financial crunches are obviously not very easy for the poor, because we know that access to finance is often based on savings. It becomes a challenge for those who do not have to overcome a difficult situation. Likewise, it is equally challenging for those who do not have sources of finance to grab at opportunities that may present themselves, business opportunities and an opportunity to invest that may arise unexpectedly. As the saying goes, success is where preparation and opportunity meet. Therefore, if we are to create more success stories, it means that people need to have the financial opportunity as well. As another saying goes, you need money to make money. The government recognizes that access to capital through responsive financial institutions is really a prerequisite for wealth creation. It is this for all countries. Our financial architecture has evolved over the years to become more sophisticated, with greater services and opportunities for saving, borrowing, and investing. We have seen the expansion of credit unions. They have done exceedingly well in our islands. We have seen banks and insurance companies providing a number of portfolios for savings, pensions, and investment. We have seen government support through the continuation of small enterprise funds such as Bell Fund and the introduction of other venture capital funds through the St. Lucia Development Bank. Axel Finance adds to this suite of opportunities for borrowing and investment. I believe that your company must, however, let the average citizen know what you can offer. All too often, people simply do not know what is available, what opportunities they can embrace. Therefore, it is essential that you differentiate what you have on service to the everyday individual. You must speak a language that they understand. You must show them how your service can work in their interest. You must build their confidence in what you can offer. You must show that a loan can be not only for those who have money or collateral, that they too can access your offering. And importantly, for everybody's sake, you must teach and preach financial discipline. It makes no sense putting people in unsustainable debt. It is for that reason that I like the moral content of the message of Mr. Rosenberg, because he's very anxious that at the same time that his institution makes loans available, he is concerned about the financial capacity of the individuals and not to continue their lives in borrowing. That borrowing is only a step to greater proficiency and greater self-sufficiency. When Axel Finance entered St. Lucia in 2012, there was some skepticism, some concerned faces. The Caribbean has had a fairly well-developed banking sector, and there have been a number of financial institutions offering a wide range of services. How then would a privately driven microfinance institution survive in a country with so many people connecting to a bank or credit union? Question was, can a new financial institution enter a market in which other large financial institutions face elevated levels of non-performing loans? Because that is the reality that we have in our country. Why on earth do we have all these non-performing loans? The portfolio is huge. I would say, however, that our presence at this branch opening is a good indication that there is certainly a demand for such services and that you have recognized the need to expand and not to close shop. One of the recent shocks the people of St. Lucia and Vieux-Fort had to face recently was the unexpected flooding from the Christmas Eve trough. Mr. Rosenberg, I recall media reports showing that members of your team volunteered their services to assist the community in the rebuilding efforts following the disaster last December. Therefore, I'm sure that you are aware that the process is ongoing, so the establishment of your new Vieux-Fort branch is timely. And I know that you did not establish the Vieux-Fort branch to please the Prime Minister or to please the parliamentary representatives. You established your Vieux-Fort branch because you realized and understood that there were opportunities, and the people of the South also needed to be treated fairly and equitably and be given the same opportunities that others were able to secure. Speaking of that trough, and I want to return to it very briefly, the overall losses sometimes are not understood, as indeed happened with Thomas. In this instance, the overall losses are in the region of 100 million US dollars. As I mentioned recently at the Commonwealth Small States Conference held in St. Lucia last week, as a country, we have had to face damages and losses from Thomas and the trough. And in a period of 4 years, the value of the losses represents 2/5 of our annual economic output. And so at the individual level, at the level of the small business, for the taxi operator, for the bus operator, for the entrepreneur that requires money to reinject into her or his business, you can play an invaluable role. As Mr. Rosenberg also said, there is a wide recognition that small and medium-sized enterprises form a broad platform for economic activity throughout most countries in Latin America and the Caribbean. According to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD, SMEs account for about 99% of firms and 67% of employment in our region. They generate employment and income for about 50% of the formal workforce in manufacturing and most of new jobs and sales growth in the region. In other words, sir, I am really attempting to say to you that investment in small business provide us with the greatest opportunity in the short term to expand employment opportunities. 100 small businesses, each employing 3 persons, already we are talking of 300 persons at work. Therefore, I believe that our focus on growing our SMEs is correct so that they can enhance the quality and quantity of their products and services, develop good ideas from the mind to the shelf, and broaden their markets by finding export opportunities. I think the essence has to be that people have creative ideas and they need opportunities to explore those ideas. There are so many gaps in our economy, so many gaps for services in our economy. The key is to find the right niche, the right opportunity, and to invest. If we are to grow our economy, there must be short ties between foreign direct investment and the local private sector, including the non-traditional sectors. Money must circulate, and it circulates best with SMEs driving growth. Interestingly, the OECS Business Council met with members of the private and public sectors in St. Lucia last Wednesday to present its rationale and strategy to engage and represent the OECS private sector at the regional level. Sir Dwight Venner, Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, highlighted the need for a strong private sector to change the course of our region. And we have now reached at that point where we all have to make dramatic changes in what we do. We cannot be afraid of the future. It is either now or never. And crises can be debilitating. They can take the best out of you, but crisis is also a moment of opportunity. And this is what the central bank governor had to tell persons who are in the private sector. The crisis has exposed the major structural issues. We have not developed a private sector which has been given the chance to move out of a certain zone because the system has been skewed towards importation for distribution and a few commodity exports. Some of the problematic factors that are hampering SME growth as identified by the Inter-American Development Bank, the IDB, are insufficient capacity, inadequate supply of infrastructure, and access to financing. Topping the list, in fact, is the inability to access financing. So this reality is a wake-up call for everyone, financial institutions, government, and the private sector. It is, of course, an opportunity for Axel Finance and for a very brave investor like Mr. Rosenberg. It is this inescapable need to access financing that makes the launch of Axel Finance branch here in Vieux-Fort more significant. It is anticipated that several small contractors will be able to secure bridging finance, get credit to purchase raw materials and supplies, as well as tools and equipment. And as I said, sir, that whether you realize it or not, you have removed a major burden off the shoulders of many of us who have to provide advice on these matters. At the consumer level, it is my understanding from Mr. Rosenberg's message that Axel Finance will also offer loans for the people of Vieux-Fort and the surrounding communities, Labrie, and I want to assure the member for Vieux-Fort North too, to meet a range of personal needs, education and health costs, as well as household items. At the back of many of your minds would be this: can you trust St. Lucians? Will they pay back? The answer is yes, you can. Yes, you can. We are trustworthy people. And I think that when you look at the performance of the loans extended by Axel Finance over the last couple of months, the evidence is plain to see that the level of performing loans is exceedingly high. Sometimes all we need is a little bit of trust. And I believe that we are good, we're decent people, and that when we encounter difficulty, the difficulty is very, very real. And so, sir, I just want you to tell you that while you have to manage your business in a very prudent way, in a very careful way, like all businesses, but do not fear the St. Lucian people. You can trust them. On the premise that all the foregoing is feasible, everything I've said, then there is every reason to expect that the presence of Axel Finance here in Vieux-Fort shall further stimulate economic growth and, by extension, create more jobs. It is true, as I said, that these are challenging times. It is equally true that these times are not without opportunity. We can, if we wish, change for the better. It will mean that we adopt financial prudence, sound financial management at the personal, corporate, and national levels. There is every indication that our economy is set to grow. Yet it can grow more if both government and the private sector are in the position to do more. We are far from being out of the woods in terms of the government's finances itself. We have major challenges with the government finances. The problem in St. Lucia does not really have to do so much with the private sector as it has to do with the finances of the government. And so all opportunities that can expand the private sector would be welcome opportunities. And so in declaring the Axel Finance new office in Vieux-Fort officially open, I encourage you consumers and entrepreneurs alike to take full responsibility of this new opportunity to access credit responsibly in pursuit of your dreams and aspirations. Mr. Rosenberg, the government and people of St. Lucia look forward to a great partnership, a partnership built on mutual respect, mutual understanding, and mutual trust. I thank you, sir, and wish you the very best. We now declare Axel Finance open. Thank you. Open it up. Right. Open the business.